So at last, we are at the final film, the last Lord of the Rings movie we've ever gotten. And honestly, it's just about as bad as the last one. I've actually never seen this movie up until I made this video. I was not convinced that it would be worth my time, so I have not watched it until today. And I couldn't even rent this movie. I had to fucking buy it. I own this now. Wait a minute. Rated R? For kids? Now, if I said the last movie doesn't have a lot of things to adapt, this is the one where they really took it too far. Because the entirety of this section of the book is just Smaug dying immediately, and then Bilbo sleeping through the final battle. So, like, how do you make that into a movie?
I will concede, the Battle of the Five Armies is dragged out. As stated previously, it's definitely the easiest to pick apart of the Hobbit trilogy, but I don't think that makes it bad. I have a lot of problems with it, and so does Marcus. Many of his criticisms I agree with, actually, but I will still try my best to defend it, because I think it sticks the landing. Although the road to the ending is rocky, I still think it works at the end of the day.
This movie basically exists to resolve all of the threads of made-up bullshit that they've laid out. So to start things off, Smaug dies right before the title drops. And now the dwarves got their mountain back. That's so nice, but everybody's kind of mad about it. So now they have to have a battle for an entire movie. So here are the main players. The five armies are as follows. Army number 1, the dwarves and Bilbo. Like I said, Bilbo's kind of not supposed to really be a factor in this battle. In the book, Tolkien makes a point to show that this whole conflict is stupid.
I simply do not understand war.
And yeah, Bilbo doesn't sleep through the whole thing, but he really doesn't have much to do in this movie. There's a certain point in this movie where I forgot Bilbo was in it. I just want to remind you real quick, in case you don't know, that this movie is called The Hobbit. Now,
Bilbo doesn't play as large a role in the battle as many other characters do, but they do give him a significant part to play. He is needed to warn the dwarves on Ravenhill about the incoming second orc army, and he's the only one who could do that, because without the ring, he wouldn't be able to sneak by everyone. So, although he doesn't play a very large role in the battle, I still think they gave him an appropriate role to play. If anything, this movie is more about wrapping up Thorin's character arc, because he's really the main character of focus here.
Dragon slain, the dwarves are finally finished with their quest. They got their home back. Isn't that nice? No, it's not nice, because now Thorin is infected with something called dragon sickness.
Ocean madness.
He loves his gold and he wants it all for himself, but everybody else wants the gold too. It's the Middle-earth gold rush, baby. See, you remember how the corrupting influence of the ring was shown to us naturally over the course of the other trilogy? Yeah, fuck that. Let's invent a fucking made-up fantasy disease that makes him act crazy and kind of gay?
This is what makes me believe Marcus hasn't actually read The Hobbit, because dragon sickness or gold sickness, whatever you want to call it, does exist in the book. They didn't just make it up for the movie. It isn't given as much time in the book as it is in the film, but it's still a significant part of the story. It ties into the central message of The Hobbit, which is that you should value love, companionship, and home above superficial things like gold or treasure. It's given a hell of a lot more time in the film, but it's still an essential part of the story in the book. Did you read the book, Cosmonaut? Because it doesn't seem like you did.
Okay, fine. You win with your gay stuff. That's what you want, right? To win.
And none of the dwarves are really happy about this. Nobody here is having a good time. And, wait, why is Bilbo taller than him?
Fair point. I never noticed that.
Army number 2 is the elves, who have this ancient beef with the dwarves. Lee Pace is the king of the elves, and he wants this gay little necklace that Thorin has. And Thorin's like, haha, it's my necklace, you can't have it. So now the elves want to do a war. Disclaimer, this necklace is only shown and talked about once in this movie, and then we never hear about it or see it ever again.
I will agree with him that Thranduil's motivations for waging war on the dwarves over a necklace is very flimsy in the context of the film, if only for the fact that they deleted the scene which explains his motivations. In a deleted scene from the Battle of the Five Armies, Gandalf reveals to the audience that the necklace or gems that Thranduil desires used to belong to his wife, who has long since passed away. That would have added an extra emotional layer to Thranduil's character. We would understand his motivations and why he would be willing to take such action against the dwarves for such small a thing. It's because it has sentimental value to him. But for God knows what reason, they chose to cut that scene out of the film. So as it stands, Thranduil's reasons for starting a war against the dwarves because of a necklace are unclear and kind of confusing.
Along with the elves, we have the stupid fucking love triangle between the elf that isn't in this story, Keely the dwarf, and another elf that isn't supposed to be here.
I wouldn't call the relationship between Keely and Toriel a love triangle. A love triangle implies that two male characters are fighting over a female character or vice versa, but Legolas and Keely don't really have any beef with one another, aside from a few scenes where Legolas glares at him disapprovingly from the corner. They don't actually have a conflict. If anything, the real conflict is between Legolas and Thorin. Thorin being a character who's completely detached from this whole subplot. So it isn't really a love triangle. I've always seen the relationship between these two characters as an allegory for relationships people are discriminatory towards in real life. It's not really a love triangle if you think about it. I don't hate it. It's not my favorite aspect of these films, but it doesn't bother me either. I've never really seen any valid reasons for why it's bad. It does add a significant amount of depth to Keely as a character who is relatively two-dimensional in the source material.
Keely just professed his love to Toriel after knowing her for like a day. I think it's been like a day. But he tells her he loves her, and he gives her a precious gift.
It's a rock! A rock!
And that's...
To be fair, they did establish in The Desolation of Smaug that that rock has some sentimental value to Keely, so him giving it to Toriel does have some meaning behind it in the context of this film. It isn't just some throwaway, stupid scene, as Marcus is presenting it here.
Not good, because Legolas is in love with her too, because he...
Does that really matter? We don't really need to know why Legolas cares about Toriel. We just know that he cares about her, and she has respect for him as a leader and as a warrior, but she doesn't feel the same way towards him. We don't really need to know that much about their relationship before this series. It doesn't really play into the story at all.
Army number 3 is the CGI orcs. The big bad white orc has this ongoing grudge match with Thorin, and the other one has beef with Legolas because they fought in the last movie or something. I don't know. They just really need stuff for Legolas to do. I don't know what to tell you. They want in on the battle too, and they're being told to do this by Sauron, who again, I can't stress this enough. Why is he here? Do you have shit to do, Army number...
We've already talked about this, but Sauron's place in the story is explained. He wants to take the Lonely Mountain and expand from that point across all of Middle-earth. This is just the first stepping point in his grand plan. Galadriel and the rest of the White Council were able to stall him. If he had succeeded in this film, then he would have conquered Middle-earth a lot earlier.
4 is the humans. They just got their town fucking wrecked by Smaug, so Bard goes up to Thorin and he's like, hey, Thorin, since you woke up the dragon and you ruined our home, could we have a little bit of cash? And Bilbo is like, yeah, Thorin, we did make a deal with them. How about we give our good friend some money? And Thorin's like,
fuck that nigga.
So yeah, this subplot would have been fine. It makes the most sense. Bard did go out of his way to help the dwarves, and now Thorin's being a fucking dick, so of course they'd be mad at them. This mostly makes perfect sense. Except for some reason, the human storyline is tainted by fucking Alfred. He's like some comic relief Grima Wormtongue. He's the most annoying fucking character out of all of the movies in the entire series. He's not funny. He's not interesting. He has more lines than a majority of the fucking dwarves, and his inclusion in the story makes no sense. He doesn't do anything in the story. He doesn't teach anybody a lesson. He doesn't affect the plot. He just acts like a fucking moron. He soaks up all the screen time, and then he dies.
I do agree that Alfred is an overused character. He has way too much screen time, but I disagree that he doesn't teach anybody a lesson. He does serve as a thematic opposition to Bard. He has a thematic purpose in the story. The story is all about greed and how it corrupts us. Thranduil is willing to take crazy action against the dwarves because of some jewels that have some sentimental value to him. Thorin values the treasure in Erebor more than the lives of his own kin, but he goes back on that by the end of the film and dies in battle doing the right thing. Alfred dies because of the gold, the thing that he valued more than anything else. There's literally a scene where he asks Bard why he threw away the mayor's favor and a higher position of power, and he turns to his family. Bard is fighting for his family. He has something to fight for, whereas Alfred doesn't. He doesn't have anything to fight for, and he dies alone with no one to mourn him. He does serve a purpose in the film. I understand why he's there, but he is unnecessary. There are already many characters who connect back to the film's main theme, so he wasn't needed. And I agree that he takes away a lot of screen time that could have been dedicated to other characters or more interesting elements.
And those are all the armies. All four of them. Wait a minute. I mean, in the book, the wolves are the 5th army, but there aren't any wolves in this.
There are, though. Is he talking about the wargs? The wargs are what the orcs ride on, and they're far different from wolves, but there's literally a scene in the film of the dwarves being chased on an ice floe by wargs, so you're incorrect on that count.
Oh wait, there's a second orc army too. There's like the main one, and there's another one that never really joins the battle. So is that the 5th army? They didn't really battle, so are they part of the battle of the 5 armies? Oh wait, now the eagles are here too, and they deal with those other orcs. Are they the 5th army or the 6th army? So depending on how you slice it, this is either the battle of the 4, 5, or 6 armies.
It is unclear for general audience members who the 5th Army or what the 5th Army is supposed to be, but it is the Eagles. The entire point is these different forces of nature coming together to fight a greater threat. So the Eagles are the 5th Army, but in the context of the film, they don't show up until the end. So for general audience members, it is a bit confusing as to what the 5th Army actually is, because the battle was laid out in such a complex manner.
One of the biggest problems with this movie is that the Battle of the 5 Armies is stupid. It's a stupid battle that happens for a stupid reason, and even Tolkien admits as much. Hence why it is only covered for a few pages in the book. Bilbo is not even conscious for it. And in this movie, it is the longest on-screen Lord of the Rings battle out of all of the movies. It condenses everything that made all of the battles in the original trilogy memorable, and it throws all that shit in the trash. This is basically just a CGI football game. Tolkien despised war, and he wrote the story to reflect that. And I actually like how the animated Hobbit movie handles it. Bilbo is just like, wow, this is stupid. I'm sitting this shit out. And this movie has many moments where the characters are like, wow, this whole conflict is really stupid. But they still spend 2 hours on mindless video game action. And I'm sorry, but you can't have an entire fantasy action movie be about an event that all of the characters admit is stupid and pointless.
I don't think that's true. There are many times when this film touches on the pointlessness of war, such as when Thranduil is walking through Dale and looks over the bodies of his fallen elven kin. It's quite harrowing. Although the battle is bloated and it does glorify war to some extent, I feel like Peter Jackson and the rest of the creative team understood what Tolkien's intent was in the original story, how he despised war, because the film does explore the meaninglessness of it.
The movie's actively telling you not to care. And I mean it when I say it's a fucking video game. Like, right at the beginning of the movie, Gandalf got kidnapped by Sauron and he got put in a birdcage. But it's okay, because the fucking Avengers show up and save him, and they have this insane battle with these Dark Souls enemies. And I think this scene is what finally broke me. The way it's framed to be so badass and epic, with Elrond getting this action movie one-liner.
You should have stayed dead.
I love that line.
And the CGI ghosts just look so bad.
Does he realize that the ghosts are meant to be the Nazgul? The way he referred to them as Dark Souls enemies hints to me that he thinks they were made up for this film. But the Nazgul were a plot thread introduced in the first film in this trilogy. They were around the whole time.
I don't know. See, to me, I thought I was gonna get a Hobbit movie.
And you did.
And when I got to this scene, I realized this is no longer an adaptation of The Hobbit. This is something completely different. And I complained before about my suspension of disbelief, but this movie takes it to another level. For instance, Bard escapes from prison in the beginning of this movie by taking a rope, dangling outside the window because his prison is conveniently located above the lake. He then ties the rope to the mayor, who just so happens to be passing underneath. And the mayor didn't notice because he also just so happened to be pushing Alfred off of the boat at this exact moment. Then he dangles for a second before getting caught against the boat, and I guess the speed of the boat and the sheer girth of the mayor allow for the entire wall to be pulled off. Like, what?
I actually agree with that. In my own review of the Battle of the Five Armies, I pointed out how silly I find that scene to be, but I honestly find the most absurd part of that scene to be that the mayor didn't get strangled by that rope. It's kind of bizarre that he even survived that.
And then we have the most infamous scene of them all, where Legolas has to get to Toriel before she gets killed, but he's all the way up in this tower. So right before Toriel is struck with the killing blow, he hops off of the tower, stabs a troll in the head, which then, in its death throes, knocks over the tower.
I don't even mind this scene that much.
In place to create a bridge that Legolas can use to go save her. Then they fight on the bridge, which crumbles, and then we get this beautiful moment.
I need help reacting to something.
This is officially too far. This is a fucking video game. If something crazy happened once or twice, I wouldn't really fixate on it, because don't get me wrong, Lord of the Rings can be over the top. But it's usually done within reason. In the original trilogy, Legolas is the only guy who does the crazy stuff. And even then, the craziest thing that he does is played off comedically, because even the movie knows it's insane.
I mean, you literally referred to Legolas as being an anime character earlier in this same video. Does that not imply that you've always thought of him as being a slightly overpowered character and that he's always been able to pull off crazy, insane feats? In fact, you literally acknowledge that right here in this segment. So your criticism of the Legolas running up the rocks scene doesn't hold a lot of merit, considering you've just acknowledged how crazy Legolas usually is in the feats he's able to pull off.
In this trilogy, everybody is a fucking superhero. The death-defying stunts are bountiful. And for some reason, it feels like every character gets a heroic moment to save someone from being killed. Toriel is about to be killed. Oh no, but it's okay. Legolas is here to save her. And right after that, Thorin's about to be killed. Oh no, but it's okay, because Legolas saves him.
Oh, come on, man. That's an awesome scene. That's a great payoff for the dynamic that had been built up between Thorin and Legolas. In the second film, Legolas disrespected him and took that weapon from Thorin, a weapon he believed belonged to the elves. It was his right. But in the end, he returns it to him in the midst of battle, showing his respect for Thorin, and Thorin is able to face down his ultimate opponent, wielding the weapon that is rightfully his. It's a great payoff.
And Bard's kids are about to be killed, oh no! But it's okay, because Bard shows up to save them. And Toriel is about to be killed again, oh no! But it's okay, because Keely shows up to save her. And like, dude, this is just artificial tension. I'm not stupid. You've done this same scene like 5 times.
Calling it artificial tension when you've literally just shown us a scene in which a major character dies, Keely, is not a smart editing choice.
It's just 2 hours of mind-numbing action. There's no rise and fall in the pacing, it's just a straight line. The only reason I'd say this isn't the worst one in the trilogy is because I could not stop laughing. I legitimately had my jaw on the floor for some of these scenes. And yes, this trilogy is very disappointing, but if you compare it to, say, the Star Wars prequels, I don't think they ever really get to that level.
Because they aren't bad at all. They're still very solid movies. I don't even think the Star Wars prequels are that bad, but that's a completely different discussion.
Being the worst Lord of the Rings movies still puts them higher than a lot of other bad movies I've watched on
because
this channel.
They aren't bad.
The stuff with Bilbo is always great, and the performances are actually not that bad. Like, even when the script is shit, the actors are all working their asses off. Though I do mean it when I say the script is bad. There are some lines that nobody could save.
Why does it hurt so much?
Because it was real.
I do agree. Some of those lines, such as that one, are kind of cheesy, but they fit within the context of the film. I don't mind them that much. There's always a certain level of cheesiness to these movies that existed even as far back as The Lord of the Rings, so it fits here in my opinion.
And I really like this one little scene where Bilbo and Gandalf are just chilling after the battle's over. And if you ask me, there needed to be a lot more scenes like this, because I've been saying this a lot, and you can call me old-fashioned, but I think the Hobbit movies should have been about the fucking Hobbit. It is truly the biggest failure of this trilogy. I don't care how much shit you make up. If Bilbo was more involved, I probably would accept it.
What does that even mean? Like, if Bilbo was in Dol Guldur with the White Council facing down Sauron, you'd be more accepting of the story? I wouldn't be. I'd think that's freaking stupid. Bilbo would have no reason to be involved in that side of the story. What is your point here?
Understand wanting to make the Hobbit movies connect to the original trilogy, adding stuff with Sauron and making the ring more important, because that's what everybody expects when they think of the Hobbit. Because it's the prequel to The Lord of the Rings. But here's the thing, The Hobbit is not the prequel to The Lord of the Rings. It's kind of its own story that just so happens to have some connecting tissue with the story that comes after. And I really struggle to consider this a Hobbit movie. As this trilogy stands, it's kind of just Lord of the Rings fan fiction. And a lot of you wanted me to watch that new Amazon show for this video, and I don't wanna. That's just more fan fiction. I have no interest, I'm sorry. I think I might be done with Lord of the Rings for a little bit. My childhood isn't exactly ruined, but I don't think it was improved very much either.
I do agree with him. Moments such as this between Gandalf and Bilbo are standouts, and that's why I think these films are still good, because even at their weakest points, like the Battle of the Five Armies being bloated and dragged out, there are a lot of scenes like this. Gandalf and Bilbo's interaction, Thorin and Bilbo's interactions. There are a lot of great small character moments that elevate these films above a lot of other crappy modern blockbusters. I agree that the Rings of Power, I mean, I guess he hasn't watched it, but as time has gone on, it's kind of left my memory. There are aspects of that show that I enjoy, such as the musical score, but it hasn't left a lasting impression on me. But the Hobbit films have. They still stick with me. I still love them, even now, almost a decade after they were completed.
So I'm going to give this one a dumb out of 10. You know, every year I make these videos, and every year they put me in a bad mood. You guys want a ranking? You want me to rank all the movies? Fine. You ready for this? From worst to best. Number 3, these two pieces of shit. They suck. Number 2, this movie. It's fine. It didn't make me that mad. Number 1, everything else. Just watch these. It's all you need. I'm done with prequels. Society has progressed past the need for prequels. I'm tired. Next December, we're doing all the Batman movies. Bye-bye. Bilbo
Baggins. Oh boy, I can't wait for him to talk about the Batman movies and fail to criticize those films as well. I guess that's pretty much it for his video. I don't know what else to say, except that a lot of his points are incorrect. He made up a lot of things that aren't problems with the films. He didn't substantiate a lot of his arguments, and he hasn't changed my mind at all. I still think the Hobbit Trilogy is pretty darn great. It's equal to The Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. As I said earlier, I prefer The Desolation of Smaug to The Fellowship of the Ring. In response to his ranking, I'll say my ranking of the Middle-earth films is The Battle of the Five Armies, An Unexpected Journey, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Desolation of Smaug, The Two Towers, and then The Return of the King, although Two Towers and Return of the King could kind of change on any day of the week for me. I think the Hobbit trilogy stands alongside The Lord of the Rings extremely well and adds many layers to those films. As I said earlier, a lot of elements that Peter Jackson and his team created exclusively for the Hobbit trilogy enhance the story of The Lord of the Rings. I think including characters like Legolas was an incredibly smart decision and elevates the material with characters such as him and many others in that original trilogy. All of these films flow together extremely well in a multitude of ways, and they form my favorite film series of all time. But that's pretty much it for my rebuttal to the Cosmonaut Variety Hour's video on why the Hobbit Trilogy sucks. I figured this would be a fun exercise in my ability to articulate my opinion and respond to someone else's opinion, which I feel is incorrect. He does present a lot of things in this video as being objective when they are only subjective. And while some of this video is me responding with my own subjective opinion, I also tried to be objective at several points and point out the flaws in his logic. But you guys let me know, do you think I missed any points in this video? Were some of my arguments faulty? Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. Thank you to all of you who stuck around throughout this entire video. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.